Hello, welcome to your workshop. This workshop is the exceptions to the exclusionary rule. Okay, so before we get into the exceptions, just a quick review of what the exclusionary rule is, just in case you may have had a question. You probably don't, but just in case. So we know that the exclusionary rule is that any violation that the police or the government makes of your 4th, 5th, 6th, or 8th Amendment rights, and they get evidence from that violation, they can't use that evidence against you in court. So that evidence becomes inadmissible. Okay. Now, this was established in the Weeks case in 1914, Weeks versus United States. But when that case was decided in 1914, it only applied to the federal government. So basically, that meant that states were still doing whatever the heck they wanted to do in violating people's rights and then using the evidence against them. It wasn't until 1961 in the Mapp versus Ohio case that they applied the exclusionary rule to the states as well. So that means all the states now, all of the United States, including the federal government court system and the state's court system, has to follow these rules. Okay. And then, of course, we know that they expanded the definition of the exclusionary rule with the fruit of the poison tree with the Silverthorne Lumber Company versus United States case in 1920. So basically what the fruit of the poison tree means is that if you have a tree and that tree is rotten, it produces rotten fruit. So the same thing with evidence. If the evidence is bad and it was violation of some sort of right, then any kind of indirect evidence that you got from that is bad too. So, for example, if you have a bad confession, whether the Miranda warning wasn't given or the confession was coerced or forced, then that confession is bad. But in that confession, the suspect told you the location of a body. Okay? You can't use that confession or that body as evidence in court against that person because of the fruit of the poison tree. The confession is bad. Information you got from the confession is bad as well. Okay? So let's look at some exceptions. I have this paper right here. I hope you can see it. There we go. Okay, so the first exception that we're going to talk about, because we just finished talking about the fruit of the poison tree, is inevitable discovery. So what that means is that the fruit of the poisonous tree would have those bodies not be allowed in court. However, if the bodies were in a location that they would have been discovered anyway, just the confession helped you discover them quicker, then you can still use them because it's inevitable discovery. So for example, if the location of the bodies were in this remote area in the mountains where there's not even a trail, that's not inevitable discovery. If the location of the body was on the side of the road, side of I-35, then that is inevitable discovery because you would have found that. Maybe the confession just got you there quicker. Okay, so that's an exception. Now you can't use that confession, but you can use the bodies. Okay, another example is good faith. Okay, and so good faith is when police are acting in basically good faith. So they may make an honest mistake. So you may have a police officer that it does a traffic stop and they run a check on the license of the driver and they find a warrant. Okay, and so they arrest that person. They do, of course, when they do an arrest, they always do a search. And in the search, they find some marijuana in the pocket of the person who's getting arrested. And so now they're getting charged with marijuana as well as whatever the warrant was. Well, then they find out the warrant was expired and just the jurisdiction that put the warrant in did not rescind it. Okay, so that's a mistake. It's just an honest mistake on the police part. Does that mean they can't use that marijuana they found in that search? They absolutely can because they were acting in good faith. They thought they had a valid warrant and they acted according to that thought, to that assumption that that warrant was valid. Okay. Another one is public safety. And public safety means exactly what it sounds like. If the public is at danger or in danger, then police do not have to follow all of the rules because they need to make sure that the public is safe. So if you have like a bomb threat, maybe you don't need to have probable cause to search people. If you fly, you go through that all the time because you get searched and there's no probable cause to search you, but it's for public safety. They have to make sure that you're not bringing anything on the plane that's going to hurt everyone else on the plane. So that's for public safety. Okay. And then, of course, they can use the evidence that they find, even though that search was not backed by probable cause. Okay? And then the last one is wiretaps. Wiretaps is kind of like an exception, but not quite, because technically the police still are doing what they're supposed to do. They still have to have probable cause to want to tap or bug someone. And they still have to get a warrant, so they have to do that. But how it becomes an exception is because that warrant becomes a secret. Because normally if someone has a warrant to, a police or law enforcement agency has a warrant to search your home, they will present that warrant to you, and then they will proceed to search your home. But when you're talking about a tap, well, obviously, if you tell the person that you want to tap or bug that you're doing that, then there's no point to do it, because they're not going to talk freely on their phone. They're not going to talk freely in their home so that you can get evidence against them. So you don't tell them. You just tap their phone or you bug their home, and you don't tell them that you are doing so until after you're done. And then you say, hey, we got this evidence against you. You talked about all these different things, like, hey, wait a minute, you didn't have a warrant. And they said, Bob, oh, yes, we did, and here it is. Okay, so that's kind of why it's an exception, because there's a warrant there. It's just not known to the suspect or to the person that's being tapped. It's not known. It's known to the court, it's known to the judge, it's known to the police, but it's just not known to the actual person. Okay, so that's been the exceptions to the exclusionary rule. Once again, they are inevitable discovery, good faith, public safety, and wiretaps.